Hi, I am Yuki, and today I will be your storyteller. Make yourself comfortable and we'll get right on it. Chapter 6. The detective asked Yilin to answer the question, saying the victim was Xiao Yang, the only son of the president, Qing City Hung Yang, of the Medtech Enterprising Limited, and was not just a random person, and asked if he could not look her in the eyes because he was feeling guilty, but Yilin answered and said the mossy head beside him had already asked the same question. The detective partner showed her the report of the investigation and claimed that no one at the school except for Yilin had a good relationship with Xiao Yang, and that was why his class advisor had sent him there, and he had already checked his background, which was clean, seeing as they both had a similar family pattern which made them share a good relationship, and said it would not be strange that he knew Xiao Yang door password. Yilin asked if he could leave with the detective partner agreeing, saying that the killer could be a dangerous professional hitman and the consequences could be dire to Yilin if they knew he helped with the investigation, and the partner asked that Yilin continued helping with the investigation so they could in turn help him. Yilin had cleaned up his traces and surveillance camera and said the only reason that he reported Xiao Yang's death was so he could grasp the situation better and be current, and thought that leaving his body behind was a bait. 4 years later, when calamities descended and the world fell apart, the criminals hiding in the dark started wreaking havoc as dogs of the four, and Yilin promised to wipe out the traitors before they even had a chance to appear. Later that night at Yilin's home, he was welcomed home by Xiao Yi, which was a digital helper, and he was pondering about someone else called Molly, who he said was time for them to meet again since Xiao Yang was dead. Then he asked the digital helper to prepare some coffee and put it on, keep warm, and Xiao Yui agreed. Since the satellites was destroyed, and then the internet also disappeared, which gave birth to an even more powerful underground of AI that uses cities as their nodes called the Heavenly Spider Hall. And this was where all the city communications system was connected, and the spider threads was nothing more than optic fibers used in the past. He had 3 levels password, which he included and activated until the last one, which needed to be of a voice activation at a volume of 80 decibels, or else he will be blacklisted, and Yilin said it, but the system said it was too low, and he asked if it was trying to embarrass him, then he shouted the password. A voice picked and questioned his identity, with Yilin thinking that he could finally hear her voice and guessed they had not met each other in this lifetime yet. They spoke to each other with Molly asking for proof of identity, and Yilin said a name that caused her to be surprised about how he knew it, but Yilin only asked for her location. Molly asked if he believed her, but Yilin only repeated his question about her identity, and he said that she would be there by 10 p.m. and wanted to use that medium to check his status first, and then opened his apostle system, to which he was surprised to see it, and thought if luck and charisma were something that could not change, and thought that he had just completed a mission which should have caused his stats to go up, rather that being a minus, but Yilin left it since they were not like physical appearances or something that he could control, and realized that self-created skills were not shown in the system. He detected a skill that could be upgraded in order to replace the damaged skill, and proceeded with it, and realized some changes in his skill, and wondered about why he had never gotten some, then thought that if he could find 2 more fragments, then he would be able to gain a new skill, and he claimed to have hit a jackpot, as the combination would allow him possess an endless amount of skills. There was a knock on the door with him standing up to answer that Meng Meng was late, but as he answered the door, she, Molly, yelled at him to die by wanting to hit him in the face with her feet, but he avoided it and grabbed her, saying she already had a habit of attacking people's faces, and claimed that she should get it checked, as it was a bad habit. Chapter 7. Molly said she didn't care about his identity, but if he dared to call her by that name, then he would be skinned alive, and if he didn't believe, then he was welcome to try. Yilin thought that she was just overreacting, but openly agreed with her, and Molly identified the analysis of the coffee he ordered with her electromagnetic glasses while she activated insect micro-explosives, and Yilin said she was worthy of being called a genius as she possessed so much black technology. which made him rest, but left him wondering if she was going to kill him, and she asked him not to talk as if they were close, as Yilin was just a stranger who knew her encrypted number and her hated nickname, and thought to herself, if she had not prepared some safety measures, then she would not have being there. Molly was shocked that he knew about how she liked her coffee and recalled what he said on the phone, then questioned his identity and other things, but Yilin could not answer, as there would be devastating consequences. The said he was going to tell her a secret, which Molly was not supposed to tell anyone, but she flung her legs out, saying he should get away. But Yilin grabbed her legs, saying he had been her guardian angel that was protecting her and had come for repayments. Molly called him a vulgar name, saying he only wanted to bed her when she clearly thought of him as a research specimen. But she regarded it as a soap opera when he asked if she didn't believe. And then Yilin vanished right in front of her, and she quickly turned on her electromagnetic glasses, which could not detect him. Meanwhile, a passage to the inner world had been opened. An apostle level is basically the outcome of evaluation of an apostle combat power, which means the tower would always transfer apostles to the floor that matches their capabilities. In the 4th floor, they told of a village of people living in the mountains and were terrorized by ghosts, and 5 young exorcists had entered from the outside world to bring a sliver of hope to the villagers, and Yilin's mission was to kill the Ghost King, and if he failed, then everyone dies in the mission. There was a scream from a girl asking everyone to run, as there was a ghost, while Yilin thought that since he was able to obtain chaos energy from killing revenants, then the same should be applied to the ghosts. The girl asked him not to go, but Yilin continued and asked why the girl was following him, and she answered that her dad was attacked by a ghost. They saw the ghost. Chapter 8. The ghost ran towards them with the child, saying it was coming towards them. And Yilin asked about why she didn't shout louder, saying the ghost didn't hear her. And the child thought Yilin to be a despicable human for using a child as a shield, but Yilin said she was not a human and even tried to trick him by making up a father. And the child was shocked that he disappeared and even surprised the ghost when he re-emerged at its back and asked if it was not going to attack her, since he knew they were working together from the start. Meanwhile, the other 4 exorcists were together with Li Change, counting their numbers and pondering that the mission had said they would be 5, and thought about where he could have been, and not knowing that a deviation in the spawing had caused the apostle to be transferred to a location away from the main route. Yilin considered it interesting to have been spawned to a wrong location and thought it to be surprising that he got to experience something only heard in stories. And though they were considered dangerous, it was also usually a blessing in disguise because they usually found hidden quest. There was a notice of the target being kept in a state of dizziness for a short period as calculations of the new route was completed, and it informed Yilin to head to the village in the west to learn the ghost-killing technique and become a true exorcist. He was surprised that he could not kill the ghost and said he had thought of many ways to kill it. And the system warned him against taking up such fruitless actions, and he thought of its abilities to regrow body parts, while the child claimed that he was a psychopath and wanted to run, otherwise she would be next. The system congratulated him on winning and was now rewarded with the achievement of the stubborn one, and got a chaos points of 666 energy. Then Yilin asked the ghost to leave when the system notified him about a skill to be upgraded, and Yilin was able to do that due to the chaos skill making him earn a skill fragment, a total of 2. The child ghost was running and mumbling to herself about Yilin when he struck her, and then asked her to stop pretending as the ghost fro earlier didn't die. So the girl stood up and asked if she was not cute enough, and that was why he had struck her, Wyke drawing out her fangs as she turned to attack him. But she fainted on the ground before she could reach his side, and Yilin claimed that her mentality was fragile and asked about how she was supposed to be a ghost, and though that the way to activate the skill was indeed a little embarrassing, and that was when a lady in red appeared before him. Chapter 9. The child ghost shouted to her mom that Yilin was bullying her. Yilin was shocked that the child called her mom, and the child ghost yelled that he was trying to escape as the mom attacked him. He thought that he needed to get rid of her, but was still unable to use the ghost killing technique and had to head to the village in the west and learn the skill, Yilin said. She was too fast, and guessed that he would have to verify that things had gone too fast, and then she grabbed him, saying he was a top-quality product as she smelt different from the villagers there, and Yilin said the world will finally know pain. The woman welcomed him as her husband, and he questioned her about if she knew the Ghost King. Then she exclaimed in surprise that he had different versions of her, and asked if he was playing some kind of identity-guessing game, but Yilin flung her away and asked that she left that place with her daughter as quickly as possible, and they ran away, while Yilin thought that the ghost didn't know about the existence of the Ghost King and thought about what it was supposed to be like in appearance. Yilin arrived at the village where people welcomed him as the great exorcists who had arrived, and then he thought that he had not seen any farms or poultries on his way there, which made him wonder about what they relied on for survival, and one of the exorcists welcomed him and said they were still trying to grasp a situation in the head villager's house, when Yilin thought that he looked familiar. They were having a discussion around a fire with Li Change, saying the soup smelled tasty, but the village head son said it came from the village head body and apologized for the inconvenience and decided to explain in the current situation of the village in his father's place. He explained what was happening, saying, "The ghosts hid during the day inside the forest mountains and appeared at night, with Yilin thinking that the ghosts appeared at night because they were set on not being able to get exposed to sunlight, and the village son also mentioned that there was a black fog which swallowed people who didn't believe in ghosts and left no bodies behind, and since then they had not been able to step in the black fog place." Yilin was thinking and narrowing things down to the barest on finding the map of the current mission, as the scope of the area would be where the Ghost King resided. And as he was still pondering on the matter, when Li Change screamed and called out to his sword, Black Fame Dragon, for answering the call made by his right hand, and thought, if it had started to yearn for the blood of those ghosts, then calmed it down, saying he could not allow it cause any disturbance, and bid that they waited till it was time to eradicate every ghost on the mountain. Then the village head son and one of the exorcists, named Wei Man, praised him while others looked on in resignment, and Yilin remembering him as Li Change, an actor known to have exclusive BGM and special effects skills, and claimed that they had met in his past life, and all his skills then were useless. He turned to the village head son and questioned him about how he knew of the existence of the exorcists, while pondering in his mind that the son had not mentioned any ghost-killing technique, which could mean that he was not the key figure to teach them how to use the skill, and the son told them about previous exorcists who had come there before, even with one still living in the village as he barely escaped death, while the rest died without having to fight back the ghosts. And that made it very unfortunate that he gave up his will to fight and gave up his position, then abandoned his mission. Chapter 10. Yilin asked if the village head's son could take them to visit the senior exorcist, and the village head's son agreed to do that and asked that they followed him. He knocked on the door with someone asking about their identity, and the village head's son answered that it was he and some new exorcists. The senior exorcists asked about how they were supposed to be exorcists when they had not learnt the ghost-killing technique, then coughed, saying they would all die at the Ghost Fog Mountains sooner or later, with Wei Man, one of the exorcists, saying she was scared. But Yilin asked if the senior exorcist could perform the skill, and thought that the introduction window showed that the man was not an apostle, but rather a mere NPC in the inner world. And he recalled that the smell of the ghost was the same as the one that emitted from the lamp oil, and thought if it was exactly what he had pondered on, which was when he found the ghost-killing technique, then the man asked them to get out, since they had found what they were looking for, with Li Change commenting that he had a bad temper as they left. He saw Pan Zhengyi eating the book, which was a red one and different from their own, to which he challenged him when Wei Man remarked that everyone had disappeared, which caused them to recall what the head village son had said about the ghosts when Mai Nobunaga suddenly ran forward and slashed the head of a ghost, with Yilin wondering if she was trying to kill or save him, and she questioned if he was trying to propose to her and said she knew Yilin was showing gratitude but didn't have to go that far. Yilin earned a passive skill of the ghost-killing technique due to the host and considered it a shame that it was only applicable to ghosts when Mai Nobunaga looked shocked as he drew a knife and made a thrusting motion at her back while asking if there was only one ghost in the vicinity and said it felt like it was there to try and steal his bride. And he admitted that it was as expected, a meat block, and said the villagers were relying on that stuff collected by the previous NPC exorcists as their food to survive, and said it was a man-eating ghost, and now it had been a ghost-eating man. Chapter 11. Li Changje was surprised to see to so many of them, and said what was fucked was that his only skill was to impress others, and that had no use in a real-life situation, and guessed that he could only make use of them to fight those ghosts. Then he burst forward, addressing Pan Zhengyi to allow them work together and listen to his command while he thought to hide in the safest place in the group, as that would save his face and enable him bring himself out as the commander of the group. But Wei Man interrupted that they had gone, which left him shocked. Yilin apologized for leaving him alone and claimed that he was a good person, but it would be a shame if Li Changji didn't put his skills to perfect use, which made him bait and thought that his top priority was killing the Ghost King rather than killing the ghost when he stopped by Pan Zhengyi, whom he thought had been waiting for him, and claimed that he had guessed that much as he pretended to be sick. But Pan Zhengyi only struck at a tombstone, saying they should put an end to the matter between them today, as it had really lived up to its name as his lifelong enemy. And Yilin rubbed his face, saying he had overthought it, and excused himself while he pondered that they had forgotten the key points in the mission was not to kill the ghost, but rather the Ghost King. And besides, the mission didn't seem to have a time limit, and wondered that there was a fair amount of changes that the waves of ghost would become stronger as the night passes, meaning they would be doomed if they couldn't find the Ghost King, and said what he was afraid of was that this could mean that the real meaning behind the phrase mission failure, since the red-dressed female ghost had never seen Ghost King and the existence of the black fog place as the map. He thought that if he could put the clues together, then the only place where the Ghost King may reside was in the area between the ghostly fog mountain and the black fog place. Yilin got into another village named Guiying, where they welcomed him as a new exorcist. But Yilin was surprised that the villagers looked more like those from the previous villages, but the differences was that they looked more haggard, and their outfits was shabbier. And then he questioned them, but they only welcomed him and told him about an armless exorcist who had been at the village before him and had given them a ghost skull as a protection talisman. Yilin ran, and thought that the different attitudes of the same villages of the same village meant what he didn't want to think about, and concluded it was the past, present, and future when he saw the ghosts, and then concluded that is what they do count as, when he started attacking them and realized that he didn't need to use the ghost-killing technique and yet could still obtain the ghost energy even as they were humans. And that made Yilin understood that the situation had been set by the senior exorcist, as he had been collecting all the meat block he got and gave it to the villagers as their main source of food, and at the same time used it to change them to ghosts. According to Yilin, that made them his low-risk and high-return reward as he attacked them, and the senior exorcist was seen to claim that soon enough they wouldn't be trapped in that god-forsaken place anymore. Chapter 12. The system congratulated him on reaching a 10% in his ghost energy, which had unlocked his hidden skill of ghost energy, and asked him to go to the status window and proceed with automatic distribution. It showed a detailed leaderboard with a call to attention that it only worked in this inner world, as the only skill available was strength, dexterity, and spirit, and suggested that the temporary points were accelerating too fast and might cause physical discomfort. Yilin thought that it was a temporary ghost energy, as newbies will definitely choose to upgrade attributes used to combat, but knew little about upgrading their spirit and causing their mana pool to expand. And as for being an apostle, they were sustainably repetitive used skills, which is the greatest guarantee that one might have to clear the mission inside the inner world. At Guiying Village, Li Chenji ran out claiming that they were finally out of their sights with Wei Man, thinking she could use him by acting like a fangirl, and thought that who would have realized that his skills were only being attractive but was completely useless for battles, saying she had clung to the wrong person. Li Chenji said they should be on guard as there was movement, and Pan Zhengyi came out calling to them, and Li Chenji asked about why he was hiding before, and wondered if he didn't know what teamwork meant, and that was when they saw the ghosts with Li Chenji screaming that they should get out of there as Pan Zhengyi was attracting lots of ghosts. There was an attack, and the child ghost said. The young exorcist looked scary as she killed many ghosts, and wondered if her mom would allow her get beaten to death, and claimed that from that time the world will know pain. Yilin spoke, leaving the ghost surprised with the ghost mom saying she would protect herself, and as she wrapped her legs around him, then Yilin asked if she knew the senior exorcist with the name Ni Xiu, but she answered that she only wanted to be ravished and asked what character she was going to play, but he yelled that she should cut it out and killed her, for which he didn't even get a reward, making him think if it meant what he thought it was. But he had not processed his thoughts when the others joined him in making different comments. The ghost mother stood up, and that made Yilin yell that they should run, as the ghost-killing technique had no effect on her, while the ghost mom yelled that it was the second time, and asked what Yilin had done to her, and claimed that she would destroy him to pieces. Mai Nobunaga said a true swordsman never turned his back on an enemy, and was thinking within her that she couldn't move and didn't want the others to be aware, or else they would seize the opportunity to attack and snatch her weapon. Then Yilin carried her on his shoulder while thinking his skills were not suitable to face them head-on. But it was not that way with Mai Nobunaga, as she still had some use in the current situation, as they ran with the others, making remarks that Yilin was running even faster than they were as he carried Mai Nobunaga. They thought about the senior exorcist place, and thought that since they could not defeat the ghosts, then it will be good to allow the senior exorcist defeat them, but they could not find him. He had thought them a low-level killing technique, and they still had hope of him saving them. The ghosts were still in pursuit, and Lil Changji asked about what to do in that situation, which made Yilin answer that they closed the door. But Li Changji kept screaming that they were cornered, and Yilin asked him to be calm and reminded him that there was a friendly reminder about not leaving the house, as he clearly explained how it has supposedly happened, and that meant the houses are the places they couldn't enter, and it was the only lifeline given to them. Yilin said when things were not looking good, then they play safe by hiding in them, the houses. Mai Nobunaga thanked him, but watched. In trepidation, as he unbuttoned her clothes, asking about what Yilin was doing, and he answered that he was applying ghost oil on her body, which was an item obtained after killing the ghosts, and watched to see if it was effective. But when he laid it on her, then she yelled that it was cold, and asked him to turn off the candle lamp quickly, which Yilin did turn off. Then she asked him to continue applying it. That night, the senior exorcist, Ni Xiu, said they had survived in the god-forsaken place for 10 years, and said his partners Xiu Er and Xiao Xiao should wait a bit longer, and considered the new exorcists as pretty young, saying they didn't know what kind of end awaits them, as they shall become sacrificial to him when the time came, and they would not be trapped anymore. Chapter 13. The next morning, the sun had risen, and they young exorcists were all asleep, when Yilin woke up to the voice of the senior exorcist asking them to get out of his house if they were awake, and Yilin was surprised to see that he had returned back. Li Change claimed that his temper was still this same, and they had not even settled their accounts with him for having taught them a low-level ghost-killing technique. Yilin asked if they wondered about why he did that and concluded that he had drawn two possibilities, which was that he was trying to protect the female ghosts from last night. He was the Ghost King. He could not finish the second reason as he was interrupted by Li Chanji, who said the senior exorcist was a good person, seeing as he had allowed them to stay there last night. And Yilin asked if he had not realized the property of the door in the village yet, as it was only the senior exorcist's door that was built differently. Then, Mai Nobunaga asked Yilin to add friends with her, while Li Chanji considered that he was good, saying that he had forgotten that they had unlocked the Apostle Forum after completing the last trial mission, and asked that they all, Mai Nobunaga included, added each other, but reasoned in his mid that he needed to get closer to them as they were smart and strong. But Mai Nobunaga acted indifferent, and Li Chanji was struck by how cold-hearted she feigned. But Yilin asked to add him so he could be contacted if there was a problem, and it was there that the village head's son met up with them and praised him as an hero. While Li Chanji turned back to see that Yilin and Mai Nobunaga had left, the son presented him with a small gift as the token of their appreciation, a bead of ghost energy, and that made Li Chanji arrogant and asked them not to worry as everything would be all right with him there. At Ying's village, Yilin had obtained quite an amount of chaos energy after killing the ghosts, and thought about the results of putting it in his calamity module and kept upgrading it. Then the system showed him the results, which was when he heard a voice saying, "They met again," and he had brought a knife to kill him. The Yilin realized that after increasing his spirit's attributes, then it's made his senses become sharper, and felt a subtle change going on around him, then asked Pan Zhengyi to let him handle it. He thought that Pan Zhengyi had a screw loose, but they had really overlooked the fact that he is the only one to obtain a rare and valuable book, such as Ghost-Killing Profound Book, which meant that with the book, what world he sees may not necessarily be the same as the rest of them. When Li Chanji walked up to them and said he had sent Yilin a message which never got replied, and asked a question about fighting ghosts, Yilin said that due to the crack that Pan Zhengyi made last night, then he could completely destroy it, and Pan Zhengyi shouted that whoever fight it to the end becomes his brother by oath, and Yilin destroyed it, which earned him a side mission, the conspiracy of the legendary exorcist. It said to find the rest of the fragments of blood jade and figure out the conspiracy of the legendary exorcist, which would earn him the ghost-devouring art skill upon completion of the side mission. Yilin told Pan Zhengyi that he would bring him to a good place as they would be climbing a mountain. He recalled that the senior exorcist was not in the village last night, and so he took a walk to find him, but he was still nowhere to be found, which meant that the only likely place was the summit of the mountain. And to think the blood jade had something to do with his conspiracy made Yilin conclude that they would have their answers when they got to the top of the mountain. Chapter 14. Yilin claimed to be right as the ghosts had advanced to a higher rank in just one night, as they would be in a more disadvantageous situation if it is being dragged out. Pan Zhengyi took the ghosts out, as Yilin decided he would need him to face them head-on, since his own skills was useless against them as they passed through the foggy forest to reach the summit. He checked their status window and saw that everyone was making progress and trying their best to eradicate the ghosts, but felt that something was definitely still off, to which he ordered Pan Zhengyi that they should leave. They got to the summit of the ghostly fog mountain that was filled with the red spider, a flower that blooms along the path that would take to the underworld, and it is said to bloom for 1,000 years. Yilin considered it as the god-forsaken place that people usually talked about when he was haunted by the image of Meng Meng, Yi Yi, whom he had promised to save but couldn't do so, and they called out to him for not saving them and asking that he helped them now, but Yilin apologized about not being able to protect them in the past. Yilin was glad that he had added that temporary points to his stats, as he didn't need to worry about being unconscious in the illusionary world, which was part of what he had expected to happen, Yilin found some arrays and thought the illusion was due to them being built, then looked in shock at Pan Zhengyi, whom he believes his spirit stats was not up to because he ate the flowers, and concluded that he was crazy. Pan Zhengyi had not expected to see his friends while the senior exorcist spoke behind them that he wasn't expecting to see them there, but they had made it easier for him to kill them sooner than he had planned, and Yilin told Pan Zhengyi that she should concentrate on his friend while he would face the senior exorcist. Based on Pan Zhengyi actions, it showed that the rest of the blood jade was inside those tombs. Yilin had recalled what the village head son said about the 3 exorcists, and then concluded that the senior exorcist, Ni Xiu, must have built the tombs for them, and mentioned that it must be the pair, mom and daughter, that he had encountered who hand-turned to ghosts, and the senior exorcist said they were his daughter and granddaughter who had been great exorcists, but none of them could get out of that place and claimed that everyone had to die. But Yilin asked about why he was still alive, and the senior exorcist claimed otherwise, saying he wasn't alive and neither was he dead, and explained what Yilin had misunderstood from the beginning. The senior exorcist, Ni Xiu, said the other 2 exorcists were not killed by ghosts, and this came to light in the story he told of about 10 years ago when there were actually not many ghosts around, but they got corrupted by bad energies while slaughtering ghosts, and eventually turned into ghosts themselves, and claimed that he had also been present, but had to cut off his arms at the last minute, which saved him from being a ghost. The senior exorcist, Ni Xiu, said the only way to save them was by creating new and stronger ghosts to replace them by bearing the curse of the damned people. Chapter 15. Yilin was not too fast to finish the activation phrase as the monster attacked him, and Yilin was shocked to see him in a hole with the monster calling him a shameless brat. Then Yilin asked Pan Zhengyi about why he had dug so many holes, to which Pan Zhengyi told him. The reason saying apparently the fragments of the blood jade was not in those tombs anymore, and this causes the senior exorcist, Ni Xiu, to question them about the search of the blood jade and explained its creation. That it was the blood of his daughter and granddaughter which he had used to make it, and that was the key to maintain the array. And he told them 2 things he had planned down so he would get to use them all. The senior exorcist, Ni Xiu, being a monster, tried to attack Yilin, but Pan Zhengyi jumped to his front and claimed that he could not hurt him as Yilin was his brother, and the monster shouted that they won't be leaving anyway, and dared Pan Zhengyi to attack him, which he did by biting him, and that allowed for Yilin to attack him from behind, as he told the senior exorcist about he, the senior exorcist, had pride and was being arrogant. The monster taunted that he won't get killed because of the low-level ghost-killing technique. But Yilin got the blood jade, which made the system congratulate him on achieving his side mission, which had earned him a ghost-devouring skill, after reading about what he could do on the window. We will continue this story soon. In the meanwhile, you can choose from this exciting stories. See you there!